Our first Elation Path character has finally been revealed, but due to Hoyo's schedule being thrown off and the 3.8 patch being extended, we still have no idea how the Elation Path will function or what sets it apart from other paths. When Remembrance was first revealed as a playable path, we got a preview for it during the patch before Amphorius. But since that isn't the case for Elation, and we've been left in the dark, I wanted to give my take on what I expect from the Elation Path. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video. LD Shop is a safe and reliable top-up site that allows you to buy currency across multiple different games, including Honkai Star Rail, Genshin Impact, among other games. They offer prices at a discount, from anywhere up to 13% to 25% cheaper than topping up in-game. Not only are the prices cheaper, but they make topping up completely effortless. All you need is your server and game ID, and you're good to go. No hassle at all, and no personal information required whatsoever. After purchase, you can see that the Jades are sent to my account within 5 minutes. There are no downsides to using LD Shop for your purchases, as the prices on LD Shop are strictly better than the prices in-game. But the upsides don't stop there. Users who register using my link in the description below will get an exclusive 15% and 5% coupon, which can save you up to $50. Additionally, if you spend $80 in total, you can earn an Express Supply Pass for completely free. If you want to top up at discounted prices with no downsides, using a website and method that has been approved as safe by multiple large content creators in the space, then click the link in the description below to head over to LD Shop and start saving money on your gacha game top-ups right away. I've seen a lot of different theories on what we can expect from the Elation Path, with a lot of people pointing to the newest planet ornament set that was released with Cyrene, the Tengoku livestream relic set. Since this relic set is all about consuming skill points, there are a lot of theories that the Elation Path will be heavily related to skill point consumption or management, and having the ability to consume multiple skill points all at once, similarly to Imbiber Lunai and Archer. This would be on theme for the Elation Path too, since one of our current main connections to Elation in the lore is through Sparkle, whose kit is all about skill point management. I understand why people would look to the planet ornament to tell us more about Elation as a gimmick, since that's how it worked with Remembrance as well. Before the Remembrance Path released, we got the Wondrous Banana Amusement planet ornament set, which gave us a hint that Remembrance characters would be focused on summons, even if most Remembrance characters don't actually use that set. However, for me, I don't think it makes sense to base an entire path's gimmick around skill points, since skill points are a resource that every single team requires. Compare that to Remembrance, where summons are not a universal mechanic in the game. If anything, I could see the skill point consumption gimmick being a mechanic that a lot of Elation units have built into their kits, similarly to how a lot of Remembrance units have an HP draining mechanic built into their kits, but I wouldn't expect it to be the main thing that sets the path apart from other paths. So what else is there? What other hints has Hoyo dropped in regards to the Elation Path? Well, let's look at the pattern with the Remembrance Path first. For those who were playing the game in the middle of Penacony, Hoyo released an event called Trailblaze, Friendship is Magic, otherwise known as Trash Can Event number 44. In this event, players would summon trash cans as playable summons to essentially act as a fifth character who you could control, a mechanic very similar to what would eventually become Memasprites. It's no stretch to say that this event was specifically created to test Memasprites as a mechanic, not just in terms of player feedback, but also in terms of coding them into the game. Now let's look at any recent HSR events and see if they were testing any mechanics in a similar way as this. And what do you know? We have the Try Not to Laugh challenge, which was literally thematically designed around AHA and the Elation Path. This event was even more blatant testing for the Elation Path compared to the Trash Can event for the Remembrance Path. Let's look back at the gameplay for the event. The event focused around action bar events, similarly to how the countdown states for Robin, Aglaya, and Firefly's ultimates all appear on the action bar. For the Elation event, instead of something bad happening when you reach the countdown on the action bar, like Robin or Firefly exiting their ultimate, the action bar event would cause some sort of buff or attack to happen once you reached it. This is how I imagine the Elation Path will differentiate itself from other paths, specifically by placing some sort of big event on the action bar, and once you reach the big event, it causes something to happen depending on the character's kit. This is very similar to how the Remembrance Path took a gimmick that was already in the game, summons, and attempted to adjust it a bit to make it its own path. Action bar events are technically already in the game across multiple character kits, but they currently act mostly as a countdown timer for when your character's ultimate runs out. By turning the action bar countdown into a positive thing, it makes the Elation Path feel like a ticking time bomb, but in a good way. To expand on this even further, I would expect Elation characters to have ways of advancing this action bar event to make sure it doesn't take 1,000 years for each one to occur. I'm not saying there will be a Sunday for action bar events where you can literally make the action bar event take action, but think of it more like each action bar event having its own minigame. Let's use skill point consumption as an example. Let's say that Yao Guang, our very first Elation character, releases, and her Elation gimmick creates an event on the action bar. If she is going to have a skill point gimmick in her kit, maybe she has a passive trace that makes it so that every time the team consumes skill points, it action advances her action bar event by a little bit. Or maybe we get an Elation DPS who has a gimmick where for every skill point the team consumes, their their action bar event will deal more damage once it takes turn. It would sort of be like a mini game where the team has to fulfill certain conditions to make the action bar event as effective as possible. And I think that would bring a really fun and unique gimmick to HSR's battle system, potentially even being more novel than the Remembrance Path. After all, in my personal opinion, the Remembrance Path doesn't really feel all that different since summons already existed and meme sprites don't really feel different enough from summons. This type of action bar event that the Elation Path could have, however, would genuinely feel like a different playstyle because of how it warps your gameplay experience. Again, it would be like playing a minigame to fulfill the requirements for the action bar event. Of course, the Elation characters would still need to offer decent damage or buffs, or whatever their kit brings, during the time where their action bar event isn't taking action yet. So it would be a balancing act between how much of their kit's power budget goes into their action bar event and how much of it they can access without it. But balancing aside, I just think this idea for a path mechanic sounds really unique and fun. So I would definitely be excited to see Hoyo take this direction with the Elation Path. But you may be thinking, okay, so this is what the Elation Path's gimmick could look like, but what will they actually do? Harmony units are buffers, erudition units are AoE damage dealers, hunt units are single target damage dealers. How about Elation? And, well, I would highly expect the Elation Path to follow in the Remembrance Path's footsteps, where they basically do whatever they want, stealing from all the other paths. They can do AoE damage, single target damage, there can be Elation Path buffers, there will be Elation Path's healers and shielders, all of it. In terms of the role they fulfill on a team, they'll be able to fulfill every single role from every other path, just like Remembrance. And the only reason they're in the Elation Path is because of the way in which they fulfilled that role being slightly different. That is, unfortunately, one of the things I definitely wasn't a huge fan of with the Remembrance Path, but I don't think it's going to be any different for the Elation Path. I could see myself liking it more with the Elation Path at least though, because the gameplay of Elation characters seems promising enough to actually feel different even if they're fulfilling roles that could easily make them belong to one of our current paths. Last but not least, I of course have to mention the light cone situation. For anybody who pulled for Remembrance characters, we all know the pain of using an off-path light cone for casters. A new path means a lack of free-to-play options in terms of light cones. Hoyo will undoubtedly release some free-to-play options in the mock shop and Herda shop, but if the Remembrance Path is any pattern to go off of, I would still be cautious of what the light cone situation is going to end up looking like for Elation characters. It's nothing worth panicking about this early, but it is something that I wanted to mention since I'm sure many people will have this concern. But again, this is all just pure speculation on how the mechanics of Elation characters will work. We don't know the specifics of their gimmick yet and what justifies them being their own new separate path, and I'm not sure when we'll get that information, so I wanted to put out my own video speculating for the sake of discussion and to partake in the hype of a whole new path being revealed. Not only is it really fun to get a new path, but since this is the second new planet in a row that introduces a new path, it does seem to be the start of a new precedent that Honkai Star Rail is following, where every new planet or new patch version will introduce a completely new path. This could be either a good thing or a bad thing for balance, since new paths bring their own set of restrictions, such as causing endgame to lean very heavily into the new path's new gimmick while abandoning previous archetypes. But if nothing else, I think it keeps discussion very fresh and exciting when it comes to gameplay. And I know I am personally very excited to see what the Elation Path brings to the game. More excited than I was for the Remembrance Path, since I think Elation has a lot more potential based on what we've seen so far. But what are your thoughts on this? Not just on the Elation Path, but on the idea of HSR constantly releasing new paths as a whole. Do you have any speculations on what you think will set the Elation Path apart from other paths? Any thoughts based on my speculations from this video? I would love to hear your theories, so leave them in the comments below, and leave a like if you found this video helpful or enjoyable at all. I will definitely be covering all things related to the Elation Path once we get more info on the path and new characters, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss out on that, including Yao Guang information and guides. Thank you so much for watching, and with all of that said, until next time!